Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. We have one more. Shall I pick maybe Ana Celeste? Do you want to share with us your takeaway from yesterday?
Oi, bom dia. Bom, de ontem foi tanta coisa boa que até é difícil de dizer, mas realmente amei a ideia de falar da comida favorita e do tempero. Foi muito bom. A Karen já falou um pouquinho disso também. E eu gostei de ter a coragem de fazer coisas novas. E algo que a Lisa frisou muito é saber o porquê das coisas. Por que estamos fazendo isso? Não só inovar, mas inovar sabendo por que estamos inovando, qual o objetivo disso. Isso também ficou bem forte em mim.
Well done. That's fabulous to hear all this great feedback. Good job, Lisa. It sounds like it was a rich, rich time.
Amazing people to work with. I'm so excited for you guys. It's just fabulous. Love being part of this.
Well, we're going to use the Google Classroom a lot in this session. We're going to be jumping from group work and looking at documents in the Google Classroom. And so I just want to encourage everyone to continue to use the Google Classroom. This is how we will evaluate, how we will do a lot of the things. So I just want to run quickly through how to use, how to get the best out of this class time through the classroom setting. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And here we are with our link, and here we are with the classroom. So today we are at D3, day 3, session 5, and we're working on making sure everything is translated. So I'm sorry the title is not translated for you here. But look at all the documents that we've uploaded for you here. And there's actually only a few, but because they're translated, then you need to find the one somehow. It's hard. You can see here that if you hold the mouse over the name, you will then find the one that's in potentially your language. So you can see them, they're all here under this day, day 3, session 5. You click on it and it will drop down all this material. And you can see we will be going through a lot of these. So if you can go to the Google Classroom and have this in the background, if you're on your phone or if you're on your computer, you can have it on the side, because we will be using these documents. And we want you to start downloading them for yourselves, having them open and having them ready. So the first document that we will go through a little bit later on is this cultural communication styles. So here is one here. Estilos de comunicación culturas, or something like that. Pardon my really bad accent. So we really want this to be available for you. We want this to be a place, a resource, also a place where you can connect with these, you can utilize these for future references, and they're going to be things that are going to be useful for you as a facilitator in a classroom. So just want to show you the Google Classroom again. You also should get emails, which you'll be able to click on links for these. And so I just want to show you today's, because we're going to use a lot of these documents. Was that helpful? Helpful to see this document? Anybody have any questions? You can raise your hand. about how this works, because we want to make sure that you guys are able to utilize it. So if there's a question, we want to help you. I don't see any hands, so we can wait a minute. Okay, great. Well then, we're going to have Anna, the lovely Anna, go through this session with us and understanding our learners. And as we understand our learners, we first must remember we're learners. And so I'm always learning. I don't think I've arrived yet, but Anna's pretty close. She's doing a good job. So this is why she's the one talking about this today.
I don't know if that's true.
But why don't I just take a minute here and I'm going to pray for her, and we'll then let her share with us what God's put on her heart today, this morning. So Father, we thank you for Anna. We thank you for the things that you've put inside of her, her hunger for learning, her hunger to give away that learning, her desire to see people empowered in their learning and to grow. And Father, we ask that you would anoint her now as she speaks to us about these things, that we would really hear your heart, and we would follow in your ways as learners, sitting at your feet. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Okay, well, here we go. We're here today again. I'm looking forward to what God has for us. I was and am excited to talk about this. I'm quite passionate about being learners. I am a firm believer that we were created to be learners, and we will talk about that a little bit more. But to start off with this morning, I have an activity. So I hope you came awake, because you're going to have something right away. Okay, so we're going to turn to Hosea 6:3. And put that in the chat there, Hosea 6:3. And I am going to give you 3, maybe 5 minutes. Maybe Adriana can give us a little timer for 5 minutes. And I would like you to memorize Hosea 6:3, please, in the next 5 minutes. Ready and go.
That's the one.
How are we doing? Shwai shwai, that's how we say here. Shwai shwai, kind of.
Oh, Carlinia's ready. Look at that thumbs up. Okay, people are getting ready, but we'll wait. Oh, it's here. Okay, be ready. We're going to call on someone to share. You can have someone volunteer. Should we have someone who wants to volunteer?
Does anyone feel confident that they'd want to volunteer?
Julio, is that a thumbs up because you want to volunteer? Yeah, he wants to volunteer. Awesome. Daniel, okay. Go ahead.
Ok. Conheçamos e prossigamos em conhecer ao Senhor. Como alva, a sua vinda é certa. Ele descerá sobre nós como chuva serôdia que rega a terra.
Good job. It's awesome.
Daniel, did you want to try?
Yes. Conozcamos al Señor, vayamos tras su conocimiento. Tan cierto como que sale el sol, Él habrá de manifestarse. Vendrá a nosotros como la lluvia de invierno, como la lluvia de primavera que riega la tierra.
Amazing.
Incredible, actually. I am not, my strength is not memorizing things. You guys did much better than I think I did. It sounded very good. So good job. I have some questions I want you to consider. Okay, so this is as I ask the questions, I want you to reflect and consider. 1, what was your initial thought when I gave you the activity instructions?
I can do it.
Okay. How about number 2? How did you go about the process of memorizing this verse?
Like you mean, which kind of process we use to memorize it?
Mhm.
Okay. I try to imagine, to picture in my mind what I was reading.
Mm.
Great. Okay, so you got a picture in your mind what you're reading.
Somebody use a different one.
Did somebody do something else? Yeah, that's a good question.
I put it in a rhythm
Mm.
so that in the rhythm I could memorize.
Nice.
I was doing motions.
Me too.
Motions, me too. Yes, I saw Michelle doing motions as well. Yeah. Okay, why did you choose the process that you chose? Why did you choose the method that you chose?
I don't know, but anything that I do with my body is easy to connect.
Uh-huh.
You know, it's easy to remember. When you do motions or, you know, or sing, it's like it's part of me. You know, it's easier to memorize.
Great. Good. Diana, do you have a question?
No, she wants to share.
Oh, you want to share?
Não, eu queria compartilhar. Tá dando para me ouvir?
Oh, sorry, I didn't turn on the translation. That's terrible. Can you, Michelle, would you repeat that again?
Quando eu preciso memorizar uma coisa, eu tento entender o que é essa situação para que eu não só grave as palavras, mas aí quando eu preciso lembrar, eu sei o que o contexto quer dizer. E aí eu consigo explicar o que o contexto quer dizer. Então, isso me ajuda a memorizar coisas. E eu também escrevo, porque eu consigo lembrar das palavras que as minhas mãos escreveram. Então, isso me ajuda muito no processo de memorização.
Nice. Thank you. Someone else want to share? Someone else was saying. Okay, I thought I heard something. Okay, so I'm wondering also, here's another reflective question. Was your choice out of how you've been taught to memorize something? Like a pattern that you've been taught on a process of how to memorize, or how you have discovered the best way for you to remember something? Some of our friends that shared told us, Diana just told us, I think about this because it helps me in this way. And so I wanted you to reflect on how you responded in this time. And because it's important to understand, how do we do these things? Okay? Because we are learners. Yeah. And so I am going to also pick on Juliana and ask her to share with us as well her thoughts on these questions. Can you share with us, Juliana, what your initial thought was? How did you go about the process?
Para mim, eu sou muito ruim de memória. Então, a primeira coisa foi, não vai dar tempo. Não vou conseguir. Mas eu fiz uma escola para MCA e a gente precisava decorar os versículos, né? Então, eu me lembrei do método que eu precisei aprender naquela época, né? Eu precisei fazer justamente esse processo, entender como que eu aprendia, como que eu conseguia memorizar alguma coisa. Meu papel está aqui todo rabiscado. Então, eu precisei escrever várias vezes o versículo e ficar falando em voz alta. E aí eu consegui, não consegui memorizar muito, não. Talvez a primeira frase eu saiba. Mas foi mais ou menos assim que aconteceu.
Thank you. I wanted to start with an exercise where we were actively trying to learn. Because today we're going to talk about our learners. But also it's always good to become a learner again, to remind ourselves what it's like to be put in that spot where I need to learn something, and in a context where there's a bit of pressure as well. And how do I respond when that pressure is put on me? And how does that affect me inside myself? And then what process do I go through to try to get to the point of learning something? Those are all important dynamics that our students will consistently be going through in our courses, that we need to keep in mind and keep fresh in our mind, especially as a school leader. understanding, yeah, I've done this course again and again, and sometimes I can be so familiar with something and I need to be reminded, what's it like to be that initial learner again? And so I want to just start with that to remind us what that's like this morning. As educators, we always need to consider how to understand our learners. That is one of our most important jobs. And in the U of N, we have the value of valuing the individual. And so it's not only understanding the dynamics of the group, but it's also understanding each individual and how to help them. There are a lot of things to consider as we are a multicultural community. And I want to start with talking about how culturally different we can also be in our learning. That's also very important for us to understand. And we need to consider then our approach to education for our classrooms and for our students, because they are diverse. There are many cultures in our classroom. And it's not really like this idea of majority rules, because that's not our value. Our value is that each one is important, and each one we are helping to succeed. That's our job, is to help them succeed. So by nature, we're learners. If you consider from a very young age, all you're doing as children is consistently learning. We always talk about, well, in my culture, we talk about the terrible twos. And part of that has to do with the why question. Why? But why do we do it like that? Why are you doing that? Why? And a lot of my friends get to the point, they're like, just because that's how it works. They don't know what to say anymore because they're just constantly asked more and more questions, which is such a good thing because we're created with curiosity. So part of our nature as human beings is to be curious because we are learners. And the way that we live life is through learning. And I don't think that ever stops. I learn new things every day from different people, different circumstances, different situations, and I'm learning from God every day. And that's part of becoming whole, is becoming more whole, is learning to step into that. So we are learning from the ultimate teacher every day. And as we step into our image bearer role as a learner, I think that it's also easier for us as educators or being part of facilitating education to recognize that I'm learning also with my students. I'm actually we just started a school this week. And one of the first things I tell my students is, look, we're all learning here. I'm learning how to work with you. You came to learn the skills and tools that I promised I would give you, but I'm also learning how to work with you. And in my context, I'm learning how to run a school in a language that I don't even speak. And so we're all on different learning curves, and we need to pull together You know, the part of what we're doing is we're all learning together. We're helping each other to all succeed as learners. First, we must recognize that we're learners. And then we must be good learners. I have heard often in discipleship we talk about, or people have talked about, to be a discipler, you have to be a good disciple. I think this is a similar principle. To be a good educator, to be a good help people to learn, then I need to be a good learner. And so I wanted to start there today in recognizing that we're all learners always. And we can enter into our school environment as learners ourselves. And learners are really in a place of vulnerability, recognizing that you don't know something, admitting that you don't have the answer, is a place of vulnerability, but also a place of humility. And usually from my experience, my students actually respond so highly to that vulnerability in understanding that we're all learning together. So I think to be good educators, we must be good learners, and as again, actively learning alongside our students. It helps me to identify with my learners, to remember what it was like to be learning, to be open to question asking, because that's how they learn. That's how we learn, is by asking questions. Something I've learned over my years in many cultures is that it's not okay to ask questions. I think this is a very sad thing, because if we are made as learners, how can we learn if we can't ask questions? And so some cultures, it's not okay to ask questions, which hinders them from being able to learn, and also hinders them from having the skills of question asking. Because question asking is also a skill. And so sometimes, because we haven't asked enough questions, we or our friends or our students haven't asked enough questions, then their questions can come across not so well, because their skill is very low. So if they've been stunted to actually grow in their question asking skills, they might come off wrong. You can hear a presumption behind it. You can, you answer the question, but they're like, that's not what I'm asking. Like, but that's what you asked. Because sometimes we ask a question and it's not the accurate question for what we really want to get feedback. So understanding that we need to allow questions. We need to allow room for all of us to grow in our identity as learners, us ourselves, but also our students. And as educators, our priority is to encourage curiosity, to encourage them to dig in and ask more. And I should be the most approachable person for them to ask questions. I'm the one that promised them that I was going to help them. I'm the one who said, come to my school. I'm going to help you get there. These are the things that we have promised our students. And that's our heart in the U of N, as we want to help them succeed. And we are committing ourselves to our students to help them get there. So I want to make sure that we are in a place as well as educators to identify being a learner and being open to being asked all the questions. And in that, if I don't know the answer to the question, it's okay, because I'm also learning. And so then either I go find out the answer, or I say, let's go find out the answer together. But I think it's important for us to be in that position of learning with our students. That is definitely a place of vulnerability and can be very uncomfortable at times. Lisa, you have a comment or a question?
I just wanted to underscore what Anna's saying. There's so much richness here. And to tell a story of how I learned the power of practicing asking questions. When I first began to teach children, I would start each topic each day, and I would say, what are some questions that you have about this topic? And in the beginning, the children were a little confused, saying, what do you mean? I don't know. What do you mean question? And I encouraged them, write down one question, write down two questions. And over time, I encouraged them, gave them examples, pushed them to ask questions. And by the end of our school year, I could walk in the classroom and say, what are questions about this topic? And they could write about 20 questions in about 3 minutes. And they developed the skill of asking questions, but the mindset of, I want to know. What do I want to know? What don't I know? What's the meaning of what I want to know? And so I saw the skill develop, and I saw the way it changed their attitude toward learning. It's like working up an appetite. Everything tastes good. So what Anna's saying is such a practical, important element of our classroom process. And even though it might be uncomfortable and unfamiliar, it's like anything else. A skill is something you can practice and get better at. So I just wanted to encourage us. That's my experience with children. How much more can we decide to enter into that process and see good fruit in ourselves and in our students?
Thanks, Lisa. That's so true. I was just about to say, I also always consider how we're called to be like children. And this is aspect of that. That's not all of it, but it's a definite aspect of the curiosity, the desire to know, the desire to draw near, and sometimes the curiosity gets stunted by culture or people or whatever it is. There's different things that cause the stunt of curiosity. But curiosity is what causes us to grow and be creative. And it helps us to get vision. It helps us to, again, ask God the questions we haven't asked, because that's what I want to know. And to create and co-create with God. And it's such a huge need for us and for the nations of the world. And I do believe that it's one of the things that God has called us as the U of N to redeem in education, and is for people, for the openness.
That's right.
Of curiosity and learning for everyone as well. Lisa, do you have something?
I mentioned yesterday that I have some very young children, grandchildren that live quite close to me. And I'm reminded so much of this because my 3-year-old, he never stops asking questions. And what I've noticed is he'll say, but what if I do that? If I give him instructions, what if I do that? And then what if I do that? What if I do that? And then he'll ask the question, what if I don't do that? I'll ask him, go wash your hands. Well, what if I don't do that? And if I answer, well, then you'd be eating with dirty hands. Well, what if I don't do that? Well, then what would happen? And the temptation when I had my son, he's very much like his father. My son, I felt threatened by those questions. And I thought, you're being disrespectful. You're being rebellious. And I realized as I raised my son, his intention isn't to challenge me and my authority. He's processing. He's trying to understand what are you asking me to do and why? I want to understand. And so sometimes what Anna's saying, the difference in our culture between asking a question versus questioning of, we see it in the Bible, don't we? In Mary and Zechariah, they both were confronted with an unexpected situation of a baby being born that wasn't supposed to come. And Zechariah said, I don't think so. How's that going to happen? And he positioned himself, I'm not going to believe this until you prove it to me, until I understand. And the angel said, you need a little time out to think about your attitude. Mary asked the question and said, really? Oh, wow. How's that going to happen? See, and her desire was, okay, can you help me understand so I can embrace and participate more fully? And the angel said, that's a very good question, and responded to her. And so sometimes I think we need to give ourselves and our learners the permission to ask questions. And even if it's a little rough, as Anna was saying, to look past the attitude, if they're asking a rebellious question, and to pull out the value of the question. I had a student in one of my schools sitting in the back and asking these accusing questions, trying to embarrass me, trying to challenge me in the classroom. And I said, I see you have such a desire for truth and such a concern for justice. That's wonderful. Good for you. Do you have any more questions? Well, there went the attitude, because I made a place for him and I honored the good thing in his heart that he didn't even recognize. He just thought he was embarrassing me. And so this asking questions and making room for it really is what turns us from spectators into active participants playing on the field, doesn't it? So I just wanted to add some testimonies to what Anna's saying. It's so important, so valuable. And if we're conscious about it, it's a simple process. It's just making room for it, inviting it. So I hope that helps.
No, it's good. Thanks, Lisa. I think that sometimes, I'm actually going to let you think about it for a minute before I start sharing more. But I want to break up into groups, and I want you to consider, okay? And I want you to talk in your groups. What shapes our learning? Okay. Maybe it's our influences. So if you consider some of the influences maybe shaped your learning specifically. So you can think of yourself. You can think of your overall culture, maybe your family. And how has my culture, family, education affected my learning. Okay, so I just want to have an open discussion within your smaller groups about this, just to start processing.
Quanto tem? How long, Ana?
Okay, 10 minutes, please.
Minutes? Okay.
So true. I agree. I feel like it sounds like a bit of a dance, to be honest. That's how I feel about it. Yeah.
Oh.
I've been trying to learn Arabic, and I feel so different when I speak Arabic. I feel like a different person a little bit. So, I really want to hear. I forgot to ask you to have somebody picked from your groups to share, but if you can just share a few points that came up in your group, I would really appreciate that. I would love to hear what you've been thinking about.
Posso começar?
Thank you.
A gente conversou muito como os grupos onde a gente está inserido, a família, a educação, a igreja, a própria cultura, realmente interferem no nosso aprendizado. E pensamos também como, agora como adultos, a gente acaba reproduzindo alguns comportamentos, principalmente nessa área da aprendizagem, que limitam a gente de expandir a forma como o conhecimento pode chegar até nós. Então, ficamos conversando sobre essas possíveis interferências e como isso dificulta, às vezes, alguns processos de aprendizagem.
Thank you. So true. It's good. It's very good. Someone else?
En nuestro grupo estuvimos hablando acerca de los temores. A veces tenemos temores de preguntar o tenemos vergüenza de hacer preguntas en el salón de clases, y eso puede ser porque en nuestra cultura no es normal preguntar. No tenemos el hábito o en la familia. Venimos de familias donde preguntar no es tampoco bueno para solucionar problemas. Y también puede ser como a veces un poquitito de orgullo que queremos hacer la pregunta como muy bien organizada y tal vez ya pasa el tiempo y el tema ha avanzado. Y también como esto lo hemos traído a Jucum y a veces podemos caer en que la gente reciba mucho conocimiento, pero no puede profundizar en esa información o estar libre también de hacer preguntas y comprender lo que estamos enseñando.
Sorry, Marcus, can you summarize? I understood that it's not good to ask questions. Can you tell me the family part that he said there? Oh, I can't hear him. I can't hear you. We'll go to Spanish.
Somehow the translation channel isn't working, I don't think.
Okay.
I can hear you in the translation channel, I think.
Please. Thank you. Can you summarize then quickly?
Yeah. Mhm. Good, good. So true. And many cultures as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Thanks, Jimmy.
Thank you. Someone else, please.
Yes. You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So in our team, we talk about we are not what like limit to one structure or one form of learning, because God has provided for us many ways for learning, and each one is individual. But also our culture, our family have a lot of influence, because they want you to achieve goals in normal education, and normal education has a specific way of learning. So sometimes our motivation is what changed, not our way of learning, because it's something that is with us from the beginning. That Michelle was sharing, maybe our motivation is changing. That's why we sometimes used to embrace another ways of communication. And also, Tulio said, we as teachers, if we are teaching, or as school leaders, we are to provide ways for every kind of uh, like every kind of way of learning. For example, the people that learns a lot with their body. How can we provide activities for them so they can learn and understand what we are teaching in our schools? And also, one question that arises: it's good to provide personal education, but also how can we balance between personal education and group education? Because it's also good for someone to know that is not going to receive everything in the easy way. Sometimes we need to get used to another way of learning, because we are part of a group. So how can we balance both?
Yes, that's a great question, actually. We are going to talk some more about those things. And in the BCC, we provide lots, well, the way Melinda and I do education provides lots of different things. But part of loving one another is catering to one another's differences sometimes, and ways of learning. But yes, we also need to try new things. Sometimes we don't know that something's really helpful for us because we've never tried it. So that is part of it. And that's for us too, I think. It's for all of us. But that comes out of a lot of those things that we've learned, we've been given, we understand, preconceived ideas sometimes on certain activities or ways of doing things. So this is really good. I'm sure we'll talk more about those things as well, but I wrote down your question for sure. Yeah. Okay, I would like to pull up the handout on Google Classroom. It is called Different Types of Communication Styles.
I know it's not the one that's here.
I'm going to pull up the English so I can read it while I'm here with you.
Come on, there we go.
Now, there's lots of ways of looking at this. Something else to consider when we're talking about learning is also communication, of course, because how we learn is also how we receive what's being communicated. These are a few of the generally different. I've seen it put in lots of different ways, and I want to more introduce and give you the ideas. Okay, so in the first one, the straight line. In a linear way of thinking or a linear way of communicating. So some of these can also what happens is the way we communicate can also create the way that our patterns of our mind process. Okay, so that's why we're talking about this. So linear, there is some examples, not only, but German, Dutch, Norwegian, Danish, Swedish. This would also be, it's a lot of Western cultures are very linear. Communication is direct, and it doesn't really digress so much off the topic that's being given. So, and it can often also be very methodical, so point by point by point, okay? I think from my experience, a lot of education has been given this way, in a linear way. And it's not a bad thing, it's really great, but it's not the only thing, and it's not the only way. And when you start to look at some of these other ones, you can see how misunderstanding and things don't become clear. So the Semitic, some people identify it as circular as well. That would be more Arabic, Hebrew, indigenous, a lot of indigenous peoples. So the ideas are expressed in a series of parallels, like it sounds like they're saying the same thing over and over, both positive and negative, it doesn't matter. And it involves storytelling a lot. And the learners come to understanding through morals or learning outcomes through a story. A lot of our Bible is in story form because it comes from this culture, the Hebrews, you know. And so the reason it was written to those people at that time, and because this is how they came to understand things, this is how they communicated. So all of us understand story. There are all of these things we all have. It's just how we naturally communicate at times in a culture, kind of. This one, the next one looks like it's more of a round and round. But the idea also, some people call it a matrix. It's the same idea. They kind of cross over at some point because you come back around to something. And this is very indirect. The topic is not addressed head on, but it's viewed from various perspectives. So it's working around the point that they're trying to make. They're not actually directly giving you what they're trying to say. You are to come to that conclusion through the way that they're going around it, okay? The romance or the spiral is usually characterized by Latin culture. There you'll see there's also French, Italian, Romanian. This communication often digresses, can talk about lots of things in the midst of what you're doing and what you're talking about. It's fine to introduce other material outside of the direct thing you're talking about. In this style, they feel like it adds to it. It adds life and color to the communication. And usually there is a point, but they're getting to their point eventually. And it starts with what here it says a hypothesis, and it gets to a point eventually. The reason I bring this up is not at all to characterize or categorize people groups, or it's really for us to understand that, again, there's different types of communication, one, which I think we'd all agree on and probably have experienced, but that also affects how we receive information. It also will affect how we respond to information and in our learning and our education. And a lot of these particular aspects are what we would define as cultural things. So that's why they're put into these groupings. And some also language, the way language is used in a culture. I think someone made a mention of that. I think Lisa actually, that the way a language works also highlights some of these things, how we communicate, how we talk, okay? So I bring this up because I want to share with you that I am American, but I am Mexican American. And I grew up my whole life needing to be direct and to do things in school that was like one way. And I did not learn until I was in Y that I don't actually think that way. I'm not a linear thinker. I'm very much more a spiral. I go back around and back around and back around. And if people diverge and they want to add a comment or an opinion or a thought, yeah, why not? And so the first time I heard this, I thought, what? I'm not crazy. This is normal. There are other people that think this way. I just always thought from school that something's wrong, I'm just different. And so I felt a lot of freedom in this myself, but I also learned that there's so much beauty in all of these different ways. But it also helped me to recognize when I am relating with people. So for me, I'm also, Melinda's the really chatty, knows everybody, can befriend a tree. That's what I always tell people. And not me though. I like to go and talk to people and I want to, get into a real depth conversation and like throw things around and ideas and have this really, in-depth conversation. And learning that we're just all different was helpful for me in being a teacher as well as being a student. And it helped me to understand my students because sometimes I would feel like, why do you keep saying that same comment to me? Why do you do that same thing to me? I don't understand. Oh, because they won't directly tell me something, but they're trying to tell me something. But I don't understand because of the way that they're communicating.
People can get offended.
And we can get offended from one another and misunderstand one another. And one of the beauty things in Y is that we have so many different types of teachers. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I sit in a teaching and I think, I have no idea what they're talking about. And I've had lots of people, I think a very common one I've had people say, I love Lauren's stories, but I just don't really get what he's, I just get lost. Lauren is a classic matrix. So people that are matrix, they don't directly say what they're saying. They often tell a lot of stories, and then maybe at the end, you kind of tie them together. And so sometimes that's why that's complicated. Anyway, I wanted to bring this up to help us. And it helps us, again, as educators, to understand that not everyone might firsthand understand our communication the way that we think that they would. And so again, we're needing to learn, how do I help them? How do I meet them where they're at? because communication breakdown is one of the biggest problems. I mean, everybody has around the world. So I thought that this might help us to understand that our learners have what they've been exposed to, have a particular way of communicating, and especially I think in our D schools, it's their first time sometimes having exposure to these differences. No idea that people communicate differently. No idea that people think differently. No idea that someone's not going to directly tell me that they don't like what I'm doing or something like this. So I'd like to, again, in considering that, break into our groups, into the groups again.
How long it should be?
And
10 minutes?
yes, 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'll put the questions up again. I want us to consider, how do I see these differences play out in a school setting? Okay. Maybe in our staff training, sometimes guest speakers, just some dynamics that we can see how this would affect our classes. How can we see the different cultural learning styles within our schools? Okay. Maybe you've thought about this a lot before. Maybe you never have thought about this. I just want to start thinking about this in your groups. Okay. So 10 minutes. And then we will have
so that when one identify his own learning style, he can identify different teaching approaches, and he can understand better how to deal with that and how he can develop strategies that he can himself learn better. We talk about how this connects to hospitality regarding preparing the teachers, preparing an environment for the teacher, talking about this learning styles of the classroom and how this could be part of this hospitality process of preparing an environment for the teacher and the learning. We'll also talk about how different teachers have different styles of teaching and how this is necessary to prepare a class for that. Because sometimes the students can have a reaction of, oh, I don't understand anything, so whatever, I don't care. And that's the danger that we have. And we need to prepare students to adapt to different teaching styles, that they won't shut their hearts down for them. Sorry, you want to say something, Melinda?
Just
sorry.
slow down. Slow down.
Sorry. Okay. And then another thought was that how, as we are walking into orality and how we want to have programs for these oral groups, and they tend to have a more the circular style, and they tell lots of stories. We really need to prepare for that, because we have programs where we have a schedule and we have time for everything and a time to start and to end. And this kind of program doesn't exactly fit this sort of learning style. So we need to think how we're going to fit this whole understanding of orality and of traditional groups, how they learn into our programs, how to find a place where both can meet. Yeah, that's it.
It's very good. It's a big one. And we really do believe that it's for everyone. And there's room for doing things differently. There's lots of room, actually. So it's great. Somebody else, share, please.
Yes, we were talking about. ¿Puedes bajarle, papi, porfa? We were talking about. You hear me well? Okay, good. Sometimes we think that learning is shaped just by culture. So sometimes we go to any country in Africa and we go with a specific way of teaching because we think they learn this way. But it is not just culture what shapes our learning style, but it's something that God has given us. It's something very personal. So wherever we go, we can learn. If we go to teach, we need to try to approach all the different learning styles in our teachings, in our schools. For example, my wife and me, we are from Colombia, and she likes to hear Darlene rather than Lauren, but I prefer the other way because she learns more with A, B, C, D, and I learn more with stories. And then one question arises, and is we teach the same way we learn, or we teach the same way the same style we were taught. So we think that both are including. We include both when we are teaching. We include both of those influences that we had. So it was a very nice conversation, and yes, that is.
That's great. I think that it's true. We do incorporate different things. Like I was saying, I am linear, but I'm also not. But it's also my exposure. One of the amazing things about why is that I get so much exposure to different kinds of teachers, different kinds of ways of doing things. And as I'm exposed to those things, then I can also participate and practice those things as well that will help. So again, always being a learner to also be a teacher. That is fantastic. We are in our next half of the session today. We are going to talk more specifically about our learning styles individually. And yesterday I had sent a little quiz for you to do your learning intelligences or styles. I want to talk about those when we come back. But right now we're going to take our break for 10 minutes. And then we'll come back and we'll start to consider and look at the different types of learning styles as individuals. Yeah.
It is really, once you see it, can you unsee it? That's the question.
All right. We have people back. Is it coming? Well, I want to start, as I said, I want to talk about our individual makeup and consider ourselves and our preferred learning styles, natural maybe learning styles. So I want you to think back to the beginning when I had you memorize Hosea 6:3. And how did you do that? I heard some of you wrote. I think that was yeah. Were you looking at it visually? Maybe you wanted to say it out loud because you needed to listen to hear it. Some of you were moving around, walking or making hand motions because Kleber was saying if he does something with his body, it helps. These are all learning styles. These are specific to how we learn as individuals. And it's actually really important for us to recognize these things. Not all our students are going to have exposure to understanding that. Sometimes their only exposure to how to learn is what education has shown them, or how they've had to fit into the education system that they were part of. That was a part of my problem, is I don't feel like I really understood how to learn until I went and did my Bible Core course, to be honest, because I needed to actually learn. And I started to figure out how I learn, not just how I was told to learn something. So I would like to start off and consider what learning experiences have been your best experiences. What learning experiences have been the worst for you, and why? Okay, so I'm going to have you right away go into groups again, and I want you to talk about that question. What were the best? Why were they the best? What were the worst, and why were they the worst for you? I'm going to give you 10 minutes to talk about this, okay?
What has happened now? Oh, okay, great.
I think everybody's back, Anna. Just
good. Sorry, I couldn't see everything. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that was helpful to consider. I think it's important for us to think about why those things are helpful or not helpful, empowering or maybe not so empowering to our learning. I think that often we have a lot of similarities in what things are not nice for us and what things are good for us. And a lot of that has to do with how we feel we can interact, connect, or respond to that learning. So I want to look at the different types of styles of learning. And in the classroom, I made like a document there where you can see the different types from what I had you do a quiz on. So we're just going to pull that up as well.
Sure.
Yep. Maybe you can go to the English one so I can see. So if you look at this, there are the 3 basic learning styles that you can identify with as your primaries, which is auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, you know, doing something with your hands. This is an expansion off of those that I have found helpful. I often have my students take a quiz before they come to the class because it helps me to know what kind of activities we could incorporate that would help the overall learning.
So this test answers not who is smart, but in what way are you smart? So they're saying everyone is smart, but which way is like a primary way that you're smart?
That's right. So, and that's important because we are all smart in different ways. So you can see at the top here, the spatial, it's an aspect of being able to see. So it's part visual because you see how things are spatially. You have spatial awareness. Sorry, go on. And you have intrapersonal there as we go left. Intrapersonal is understanding yourself. So usually people that are self-reflective, they're aware of how they feel, how they think. They are smart in this way. And they can also help other people understand themselves with their intelligence. Linguistic is, you know, finding the right words, people that enjoy words. A lot of times people that are good with languages have an aspect of linguistic gifting or intelligence because they pick up words, because that's language. People that like puns, like word jokes, usually are linguistic because they like to play on words, for instance. Yeah. Bodily and kinesthetic, we talked about a little bit. It's where you do things with your hands. There's so many things that you can do. It's just a matter of touching it, acting it out. People like to learn practically by trying it practically. They're usually kinesthetic learners. They just want to get in there and try it. It's often a common trait. Interpersonal. This is people that learn through interacting with other people. They love discussions. They love hearing other people. They love contributing and bouncing ideas back and forth. And this is how they learn, as well as how they teach a lot of times. Existential, they like asking big questions. And yeah, they like to ponder why are we alive, all these things. Logical and math, this is not my strength. This is people that are good with numbers. They are methodical usually, can think through things very clearly. Problem solving has a lot to do with logical and math. Musical. Somebody said that when they were learning, they tried to make a tune or a rhythm to memorize. Well, they probably have a musical learning strength because it helps them if they can hear it. On the school, we do learn verses and different things through a tune. And that's why we do this with children. A lot of these things we do with children because it helps them to learn. We don't change out of these things as we grow older. The naturalistic is people that really connect with nature, and they learn a lot from nature. They like categorizing and putting things in order as well. So we all have parts of these. It's just which ones are predominant for us. And if you took the quiz, hopefully it was helpful in that. I'd love to still make a word cloud of what people got from their quiz. I was thinking if we could put our primary, like the one that is the top or the top two if they were tied. Ironically, my top two are usually interpersonal and intrapersonal, and they usually come out as the two highest, which is good, but also can be hard sometimes. So if you want to, let's our results there.
I'm trying to get ourselves. Oh, okay. So Adriano sent a. Let me just screen share this. Yeah. Oh, there he is. He did it.
Oh.
So this is our response. You want to enter your response in here?
Same as yesterday, you don't have to enter your name. You can skip it and just enter the results.
That's so cool. Wow.
Existential. I had high existential as well. All these multi-language people, all these linguists, and the interpersonal.
Lots of interpersonal.
So surprised with the warm culture we have with us, that there's so many interpersonal.
And linguistic.
Existential, linguist, yeah.
Wow.
So cool, right?
Yeah.
Musical's pretty big too there.
Uh-huh.
Awesome. Really fun, guys. It's just fun to see. I know the ones that I had seen that came in into the classroom, I did see a lot of interpersonal in there as well. And sometimes I wonder if our upbringing and our culture actually does affect how we learn, obviously. I mean that generally Latinos are warm culture, they're friendly, they're family oriented, they're communal, you know. And so then part of that would be you learn with others. The other thing that we had been talking about also, that Lisa and we were talking before, is there's also the aspect that some people learn through observing, and some people learn through getting the input, like direction or instruction. But also, I know we do both, actually, but some cultures are heavier on observing how things work. So, for instance, it's a big thing here in Arab culture that you can tell them how to do something, but actually, if you just invite them, you don't have to give them instructions because they will naturally watch. They will naturally observe what you're doing. And then they take that in, and then the next time you can invite them in to be part of it, and they start to participate, and then they grow with it, instead of getting an instruction and then they're told to go do that thing. They feel very insecure because it's not culturally how they would operate. And so then they feel very unconfident because they feel launched out before they feel ready. And this can also cause a lot of misunderstanding and hurt within our leadership sometimes as well. So I just wanted to highlight that, but I want to show as well some examples of how we can use some examples of these different giftings in our classrooms. Maybe some activities that we can consider, because we want to not just know about these things, but we want to consider, how do we implement them? How do we consider how to do things differently? And in my TESOL, I was given this document that I found. That's not the one. Very helpful. I did put this document in there explaining explaining the different styles. So there's some other. Yes.
Sorry, I don't know how to drive.
Okay, so if you open the document of activities for intelligence types, this is some examples of, so like maths and logic. These are some things that would help them that you can consider incorporating. Puzzles, they like outlines. People that are math logic are usually really good at technology, computers. They love experiments, calculators, research as well. Patterns as well, they recognize that. Interpersonal, also again, videos, discussions, which I had mentioned before. You see here that there's some combination, because some film rating scales, like filming, because they're interacting with other people. So anything that would cause an interaction with other people, it's not only the outcome product, it's the process of getting that outcome product that helps as well. So musical, reciting, choral readings, practice recalling out loud, moving to a beat as well, because there's the beat there. Moving to a beat also would help kinesthetic, but it also helps with music, okay? Playing instruments is also kinesthetic, but it's also musical because you're creating the sounds. Intrapersonal, you can see there goal setting, focusing, and concentration. Imagery experiences, because you're creating those inside of ourselves. You can see there the linguistics, again, dramas and readings, peer teaching.
Everybody in this group is interpersonal, and they love these discussions.
Yes, that's true. And I thought maybe that's why I did a lot of discussions. I thought maybe it would help. with that. They do like problem solving with other interpersonal does, yeah. Spatial has a lot to do with art. Color coding, which is very interesting because you're causing things to come out spatially. Graphs, sculpture, body kinesthetics, I think we can all kind of clearly identify with anything that's having body movements in it, even if you're teaching something and you have a body movement. And then the naturalistic is classifying, grouping, sorting, and listing. They really like the order of how things naturally come together. So I wanted to show you this because I wanted to give you something that could help you to start considering maybe some ideas. Maybe you've thought a lot about different ways to meet different people. But the reality is, as Daniel was asking, is that I think it's important for us to incorporate a variety of these things. I think what the problem is when we only narrow it to a few ways. And then there is bias in people being able to learn. Sometimes we do things because it's what we've seen before. It's what other people have done, so then we model off of those things. But we want to make sure that we're also, with Holy Spirit, incorporating how we can include and learn together with one another in different ways and through creativity. So our responsibility as learners is to figure out how to adapt our situation so we can use our learning strength. And like Lisa said with the spices, we all are spice, and together we make something really amazing. It's the same with learning. We all have different strengths, different things we do well, things that we're not as strong, but we can. But understanding that together and leaving room for one another also helps bring that unity dynamic, and people can feel like they're thriving in our classrooms. Maybe they can lead out in something that they're good at or they feel more comfortable at in their way. Yeah, so like intercession time, maybe sitting in a circle and just, waiting on the Lord is really great for some people, but maybe some people like going walking because that's part of the kinesthetic part, see? Or people like to have images to look at because of their visual. I mean, there's so many things. People like to draw, people like to write.
Stand on a map.
Stand on a map is a very common one. I really like that too. It's standing and it's tactile. So there's so many ways where we can actually incorporate these things to help our learners connect with what we're doing through all of the parts of our classroom, all the parts of our learning. Michelle, you have a question or a statement?
Hold on just a second. We can't hear you. Let me turn on your interpretation channel. Say that again.
Yes, that was going to be my next point. No, don't apologize. I love that you said it because it's true. Yep.
Okay.
You're gonna go ahead
Sorry,
and
friends.
say it.
Anna, can you just repeat what Michelle said? And then everybody gets it.
Of course.
Sorry.
Michelle's highlighting that we need to understand these things, but we also, as teachers, also are responsible to know the strengths, to know and understand our students so that we can draw that out of them. And we need to do that relationally. If we're not interacting and getting to know and being able to draw out our students. So I can get them to take a quiz, but if I'm not actually drawing them out and drawing these things out of them and getting them to use them, then it doesn't go anywhere. And so Michelle was talking about needing this connection where we are doing that, where we're being intentional with our students, intentional to make sure that they are being able to utilize these gifts within themselves and being able to grow and thrive in them also, was what I was going to talk about, because that's part of us championing. That's one of our values, is to champion people. And part of what we're talking about in understanding people's intelligences, the way they learn, the way they communicate, is championing them and drawing them out for them to succeed, to excel, to become more of who God created them to be, that there are giftings within them and their creativity, their ability to innovate, their ability to ask questions, their ability to, we need to stir that up in our students. That is our part of what God has called us to do as educators, is to stir them up and draw them out. And so we have to do that on an individual level to some degree. Of course, I can't cater everything to every student, but that's why we have one-on-one interactions. That's why we do individually meet our students in so many ways, small groups, and making sure we have the interaction, but we also need the relationship with our students. And a lot of that has to do too culturally in different cultures. If the leader isn't relationally drawing out, people will be timid and afraid and still scared to do that. And I'm not going to say that it's only our job. They need to respond, but we need to make sure that we are doing what we can to draw them out. To be, we're training workers, we're training nation changers, and so we need to draw them out to be those people. My heart is to that people would see that they are intelligent and they have a lot to offer, where they may not have been told that before, or they've been stifled a lot. In their history or past. So our responsibility is to recognize and teach out of the strengths, own our own experience, but also to help others. In our next session, Lisa's definitely going to talk about what to do to adjust. What are some ways that we can create and consider how to adjust for different learners? She's going to take it more into the practical. Yeah, there's more, there's a handout quiz there that Lisa shared, and it is one that you could use if you want with future students. You can take it yourself to see. That's why that quiz is also in the classroom.
Yeah. No, I just think it's really important to remember that as we and impactful staff, we need to help our students connect. So it's really good what you've said. And I think it's amazing to just recall this as we go into all the things that we're taking in now, like, okay, I need to be able to explain to U of N. Well, how would I do that to a visual person? Like Brad uses a ball, right? So there's so many of those things that we've tried to demonstrate and model through this. Lisa's doing a lot of kinesthetic things, and tomorrow she's gonna ask you to bring some things. So as we close off the session, Lisa, do you have some instructions for tomorrow? Do you want to give some instructions? Are you still there?
Yeah, just check the message thing, because I'll probably give some instructions about some things to bring to class.
Good. Okay, that's it. You don't have anything else you want to say about tomorrow's class or tonight's class?
No,
Nope.
thanks.
Okay, great. Well, we're looking forward to it. Again, our apologies that we won't be with you. But maybe we could just get a couple people to just feedback what they heard Anna say, as we look at what God has just placed on us in different kinds of intelligences. Let's just get some feedback from today's session. Maybe a couple people highlight. What was a highlight for you? Just go ahead and start speaking.
Eu posso. Ok? Para mim ficou o desafio em conseguir assentar, não sei se essa palavra vai ser fácil aí, Michele, para você, mas no sentido de conseguir olhar para todo esse conhecimento e a importância dos estilos de aprendizagem, de comunicação e de como criar essas oportunidades para os alunos, né? Tanto para mim, para a equipe que eu faço parte, quanto para os alunos que vão chegar. Como tornar isso mais prático, tanto de uma forma que consiga ser efetivo, né, na prática.
Eu estava falando no nosso grupo de processamento sobre o quanto que teria sido importante para mim ter aprendido sobre isso antes, né? E o quanto eu acho muito importante que isso seja passado. Porque eu me formei numa faculdade que era o que eu achava que seria bom para a minha vida, né, financeira, de retorno, mas que não era o que eu gostava. Mas no conceito social, era o que seria melhor, né, onde você se encaixaria melhor, onde você teria mais oportunidades, e aquela realidade de quem se forma nisso ou nisso, é mais inteligente, tem um lugar melhor na sociedade. E se eu tivesse entendido antes que apenas são diferentes inteligências, eu talvez hoje estaria formada numa área que eu gosto e que eu estou estudando agora dentro da Universidade das Nações, né? Mas eu poderia estar com essa carga, né? Com essa bagagem da universidade que eu fiz, que hoje eu não carrego nada da universidade que eu fiz, porque é um assunto que eu nem gosto. eu fiz exatamente para me encaixar nessa regra social, né? Então, para mim é muito importante que as pessoas saibam o quanto antes o quanto todas as esferas e todas as inteligências são importantes para que elas realmente sigam aquilo que elas foram chamadas para fazer e não fazer algo só para se encaixar em uma regra social.
That's true.
Amen. That's so important. That's what we're doing, you know? Thank you.
One more. We have time for one more. Natalia, I haven't heard from you. Do you have anything you want to say?
Yes, really, I like the intelligence styles and also the different ways we learn. And I talk in English or Spanish?
English is fine.
Okay, so I really like because we are all so different, and as a school leaders, we can play with all that during the school. So it's not like we have to see it like it's something that we need to do, but it's really something that will make us have fun during the school, how to provide different ways to the students to learn, to process. And I think we were talking in small groups that it's very important to be in the classroom and the school leader. As a staff of the school, we need to be there. We need to see how the teacher is doing, how the speaker is doing, how the students are responding to that, and how we can help them to process. So we need to be there with them, learning, and we need to see how we can help them to process, to get feedback, do different things in the formal and non-formal education. So for me, I am intrapersonal and interpersonal. So it is all about relationship, but I know that not everyone is like that. So I need to like provide spaces for those people that are not so relational and they will not be so comfortable with a feedback in group, but I can try to do another thing. So yeah, we were talking about the importance to be in the classroom and with the students, and yeah, so many good ideas with the intelligence. I love this test and I love the concept.
Awesome. Well, we'll put that document. We haven't forgotten you guys who asked for the resources. We'll put that in the chats. And we just want to thank you for your time today. Good job, Anna. Lisa. Good job, Lisa. Good job, team. Thanks for the audio visual.
Amazing translators.
And our amazing translators. High five to you guys. Thanks for your wonderful works, and we'll see you again later tonight. And for the team.
Tchau, gente. Bless you.